If you want to learn more about effective management, head over to mattsingers.com and sign up for my free management training.
Welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast from madsingers.com, where entrepreneurs and business managers learn and share. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a review.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Zuzana Dobro. Welcome to the show, Zuzana.
Hey, Mas, thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. And guys, I'm excited today. We're going to talk management as always, but we have some exciting topics to cover. So, Zuzana, first of all, what is management to you, and how do you look at management?
So management to me could be anything that needs or that is working towards solving something. So, I would say many people are perceiving management as someone who is about them and they are managing them, right? That's the usual perspective of, let's say, employer. So it's that relationship between people. So management also could be the other way around. The typical sentence, manage up, you need to learn how to manage up. So there is a meaning behind that.
Yep, definitely. And what about your background and so on? And I have a feeling that there might be one or two people in the world that still doesn't know who you are. So would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a leader in design thinking transformation for entrepreneurs. And also my commercial background, I've been working in customer experience and user experience for over a decade for top 500, Fortune brands, to startups, to smaller businesses. And now I also focus on entrepreneurs and really small starting up businesses and helping them with their customer research and overall customer experience.
Excellent. That sounds cool. What makes you the most excited? Like when do you really get excited in business?
When there is an interesting challenge that makes me think, I don't know exactly how this needs to be solved, or I don't have the answers. And it's really exciting for me to see okay, hold on a second, what is the challenge and how can I actually solve it? And then I start from there. That's what really, keeps me on my toes. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, you're in a situation where you get in and you get to work with a lot of companies, right? And a lot of the listeners, they often either work in like agencies or, they have businesses where once in a while they go and collaborate with other people, either clients or, even they have they have service providers coming into their business. So I would love to talk a little bit today about how you effectively collaborate with people if we take it from within their business, right? So if you are a service provider and you more go into a big organization that's already existing, like what's the best way of really making sure you set an effective fingerprint, I guess, on the business?
Sure, that's a great question. From my past experience, just so the listeners understand where I come from, I've been on all of the sides of the business. So I've been, part of the external agency that went in to work on a project and to collaborate with other agencies or other providers to really make the project happen. I've also been in-house. So part of the brand, part of the big company that had agencies coming in and collaborating with us on a project, and then also acting as an independent consultant. I would be coming now. That's my current know-how, really, coming into the businesses and finding out that obviously there are going to be other providers and most probably other 2, maybe 3 different agencies that would be then working on a very similar project, if not the same project. So, the overall goal that the brand or company needs to achieve. So I've been on a full spectrum of this point of view. And I would say that really helped me to to be able to like kind of establish that connection first of all with your client. Let's talk about it's some type of a brand that has a campaign. They're preparing the campaign, and as you know, you might be starting that campaign with a client, or you might be actually almost parachuting in halfway through the campaign. So you need to understand where exactly in a campaign and in a timeline you are actually entering the project. And it's all about really establishing a very healthy relationship, first of all, with a client, and understanding their needs, understanding what needs to be done, understanding clearly what you've been hired for, and understanding who you are going to be collaborating. So first you need to understand your client, and then you also should be very aware if there is another agency or other two agencies that are looking after different aspects of the project. You need to be aware who they are and establish just a really friendly, personal, ideally face-to-face relationship and discussion. And then you need to understand that you are becoming part of the team that's already been running something, has an experience, and you need to understand where your position is and where you can bring the full value. But first, I would say, listen. You need to become a very good listener and really gather the information for yourself. Who is who needs help with who, and what is your responsibility, and clearly be a leader in your specific area, because they will be heavily, leaning towards you and towards your guidance and leadership to really take care of that part of the business they hired you for. So you need to be very aware of that.
Definitely. I love that perspective, because I work a lot in the SEO world, amongst other areas, but particularly in the SEO world, there's a lot of people that know their stuff, but they are often not very good, to put it politely, at building relationships, right? And very often, you see all these rants on like Facebook or anywhere, and like, oh, I work with a client, and I told them to do this and they didn't do it, and now they're screwed for life type thing. And like, the only thing I always think is, when people aren't doing or what you're asking them to do, it's typically not their fault. It's often your lack of ability to communicate effectively that actually puts them in that position, right? Because very, very few people are purposely going to do something they believe is stupid, right? I'm not saying there's no one, but I'm just saying very, very few people gets up and say, oh, that sounds very stupid, let me go do that, right? So a lot of the time, and this is where often, particularly when there's multiple agencies in the game, right? I see a lot of people kind of, either getting their ego squished a little bit, or, they're like, oh, it have to be my way or the highway, or like they don't understand the sort of skill set, and that they're not necessarily very strong in the skill set of collaboration, right? And I really like the way you put that across, because I think in many businesses, that's definitely something that's, from a management standpoint, it's number one, right? Like I always say that the absolute first thing to be an effective manager is learning how to build effective relationships with the people who work with you or for you, if you will. And
I agree.
That's to get the most out of them. And it's the same thing. If you're working with a client, right, the better relationship you have with them, the more likely they are to listen, the more leeway they're likely to give you. And fundamentally, the more likely you are to deliver results. Because in most cases, if you are any kind of service provider, or even provide something that is sort of a common service, right, the more people are actually listening to you and your advice, the more likely you are to be successful. And the more successful you are, the better results you deliver, the more likely it is that those customers will actually come back, right? So it's
all recommend you to someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah. I really like what you said about, management. A really good manager enables people. You see, it's like they really enable the best, and that finds those talents, and how individual person on the team really works, and really helps them to enable that. So It's very important, the communication. I would say that anyone who is in a, you know, like a business provider, so this is primary, I would say B2B business area, anyone who is, let's say, you know, the founder or the CEO of any small company, then going into the businesses and helping them, you know, to achieve something, if they feel that they are not really skilled when it comes to, you know, communicating with people and establishing that initial rapport, right, with your clients and external collaborators, agencies, then I would highly recommend them to consider hiring someone who has these skill sets, so they can be front face of the company and establishing that initial. Because, you know, not everyone, like let's talk about SEO. Not everyone who's doing a SEO or running an agency or being a, you know, individual consultant really likes talking to the people too much, or just being in forefront and establishing the, you know, not everyone really digs that, let's be honest. And they might be brilliant in the back end, right? Behind the scenes, actually doing the things, actually getting the results done, really, you know, like really focusing and getting the stuff, getting the results. But if they don't know how to communicate that what really needs to be done, as you said, it's not going to happen, because the clients are going to be doubtful. They're not going to be sure. So I would say like persuasion, ethical persuasion, and really having that clear communication and confidence about what is possible to achieve, and setting out that plan, why it needs to be done this way, is crucial. But you only achieve that if you're communicating that. Unless you have an insane amount of recommendations from other companies and brilliant case studies where, you know, new client coming to you most probably comes recommended by someone else, and it's much easier, I would say, to then you know, get them you know, doing and setting up and tweaking the way you need. So also depends, you know, what level of you know, authority you have in your field. That's very important too.
Yeah, I think though, in any case, like expectation versus reality is key, right? Like,
Yeah.
particularly if you know, like I've worked with a lot of people that know they're not particularly good communicators, right? And the thing is, if you make that clear up front, like if you tell a client, like, you know, I will give you one update every 14 days, right? That's, even if that's not a lot, it's still better that they have that expectation than you tell them, oh, I'm going to update you very regularly. And then, you know, that's vague enough for the client to put one sort of expectation in their mind where really it's something else you're going to deliver, right? So one of the key things that I always tell people, particularly if they're not natural strong communicators, is make sure you always under promise and over deliver, and particularly from a communication standpoint, right? So don't say nothing. Don't just expect they know what to get from you, but actually tell them how frequently they can expect to get like an update for you, how often you expect to communicate with them. And whatever you promise them, actually stick to it, right? Because
Please
that will
do.
buy that will buy you so much leeway. Like, and you know, I know people that work in well, multiple industries, but also in the SEO industry as an example, and they literally tell clients, you know, you can't email me, or you can only email me. You're never going to talk with me on the phone, right? But here's the service we provide, this is the requirements, etc., etc. And the thing is, when you set clear expectation, there's definitely people who would say, nope, that's not for me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like you don't want to trick someone into signing with you if they're not going to be a success. Right. And a lot of new entrepreneurs are often in this situation where they see cash and they're like, oh yeah, we'll do whatever we can to get the client, but they deep inside they know they won't. Right. So what ends up happening is they often lose them, and it's not just, you know, they maybe get them to pay for a month or two, but fundamentally they lose the client who have a bad experience, and if anything they end up talking negative about them, and that have a lot bigger cost, right? Because
Huge.
I mean, particularly if you're doing anything recurring where you ideally want customers staying for a longer time, right? You're much better spending the extra time finding the right type of clients for you, and then, you know, really making sure they become a success.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, 100%, because if your business is you, I mean, let's just say you as an entrepreneur or small business owner, you are your business. And if your business, which means you are not aligned with your clients, you're going to, first of all, waste a lot of time, effort, and potential burnout and bad rep from the client who has been unhappy with your services, even though you might have provided the best in a given moment, according to, let's say, industry standards. But if that client does not understand that, and if the client is just not aligned with you, and you shouldn't have started, working with that client, you're looking for a trouble in the long run. If you desperately try to stick to that client because you are, let's say, really tight on a cash flow. And I also understand that side, like you do have a cash flow, you need to watch out for that. And you really want to keep your business, afloat, as many entrepreneurs do. But if you don't realize what type of a client is really ideal for you, you're not gonna, I would say, you're gonna struggle in your business. So you're gonna have a huge spikes of ups and downs. And it's just, I don't think that's the right way of building a business, and especially a reputation, because even though if the client is unhappy, they still can talk to other people, and guess what? It's still a small world. People talk to each other. Business owners talk to other business owners. Business owners join different masterminds or different groups where they hang out together, and they learn from each other. Guess what? They talk to each other. What do you think about so and so? Who do you recommend about so and so? Who do who should I steer clear of? Right? What's your experience with so and so? So people always check, and people talk, and anyone who is not able to deliver their promise they will run out. Essentially, they will run out of quality clients, potential quality clients. And there is one more aspect which I would add to that. If you onboard a client which you somehow feel that this is not the right match, think of the opportunity cost you are leaving behind. This is huge. I wish more business owners would actually realize this.
And particularly in the aspect of where your time goes, right? Because it's the good old 80-20, but the wrong way around. So when you look at your clients right now, if you go and analyze your business, you realize that 20% of your clients generally take 80% of your time, right? And that is exactly, those 20% is generally bad match, right? And it's often some that, they don't really fit into your process, but you're desperate to try and get some people on board. So you start doing something exceptionally or something different for them. And, you basically end up with clients that doesn't fit your process specifically, or keep asking or expecting more.
Yeah.
And pretty much, I would say pretty much every single client that I start working with have this problem to a certain extent, right? And it's one of the things, like as a coach, it's one of those things that I've luckily always been pretty good at, right? Like I've had hundreds of clients by now, and I can still say that I've never had anyone walk away unhappy, right? And the key thing, that's not because I'm necessarily the best coach in the universe, but it's because I'm very good at knowing who I can help and who I'm not confident I can help. Because if I feel that I'm not clear that I can actually help someone, like I will tell them, one, and two, I will definitely walk away from it, right? I don't want clients that aren't getting a good ROI from working with me, because in the end of the day, they're just going to be unhappy, right? And I mean, my business, I've been live for about 7 years now, right? And I literally live on referrals. Like I don't run any ads. I literally do no marketing. I do some speaking gigs, but like I have no problem filling up my calendar with just like referral clients and people I meet and talk to, right? And still turning a fair chunk away. And that's the snowball effect of when you always deliver, people talk about you, and I feel it. Like it took a few years before I saw it, but like I feel it when I walk into a room at a conference. Like there's always people coming my way, right? And it's like, oh, this guy said I should talk to you, and so on and so forth. And that is the impact you get when you become good at really scoping out who is your ideal client, and when you become good at saying no to the clients that are not, right?
So can I ask, what is your process? So do you have like a set process of actually, onboarding a person or sussing out if this is the client that is going to be a good fit for you? Do you have like a questionnaire? What's your process actually knowing that this is not going to be a good match?
Yeah. So the first process, or the first thing I look at, is personality match. All right. So there's certain personalities that I work a lot better with than others, and I'm a huge believer in DISC, and I've done a lot of DISC. It's not necessarily only the personality, but some people you just, how do you say that? You get a certain vibe from them that's very different from yourself, right? And I tend to not even mention the option of coaching with those people, and yeah, I'm not even putting it on the table as an option, really. If people, so I basically have a training course now in front of my coaching. So basically, people who go through that, they tend to end up in a coaching session with me. So I give them a free coaching session with that. And basically in that coaching session, I try and help them understand what the challenges is, and, give them some coaching on the spot to try and, help them further. And then fundamentally what I then look at is basically, do they need additional help, or have my course actually fix the issues they have? Or if they do need additional help, am I confident that I can solve the problem, or at least give them a positive ROI in working with me? Right. So that's basically my process. So no one ever starts coaching with me before I've had a phone call with them. Right. So that there's no like, click the button here to pay some money and you'll be a client and we'll figure out what to do. Like, everyone have talked with me before becoming a client, and I already have a good idea of what the challenge is and so on. And yeah, that's super important for me.
So it sounds like you actually basically then, after they get to know you through your course, right? And get to know you, get to like you and trust you, then you personally have the consultation with them, and you basically see what further is there that you might be able to help them. And I'm guessing also, at least with me, if I'm not the right match for them, and I know that they need help and they genuinely need help, then I actually refer them to someone else who is actually a specialist in a certain field in whatever they need to be solving. So, like, your network is always there, and I only recommend someone that I trust or worked with, and I know they have a result. So then, for me at least, I usually recommend and send people that way. Because I can identify, I can see that this is what you need and this is why you need it. And if I am not the one, or I don't have a bandwidth, then I recommend someone else.
Yeah, and I'm exactly the same. I mean, so from my perspective, for example, I know finance really well, but like really going deep dive and doing financial planning and things like that is not something I enjoy particularly. So I always have. No, just because it's more a question of the time versus impact, right? So it can be super helpful, but it's often something that if you really want to do it well with a client, you really need to invest a lot of time going deep into it. And I have a guy that I know that's really good at that. And every time I have someone that sort of needs hardcore help in that area, I tend to refer them to him instead, right? Just because I know they'll get a good treatment, and they probably get someone who's they get someone who's a little bit more into doing that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I like the way you said it, a little bit more into doing stuff, because I personally, I'm more of a bigger picture, and I can do and dive into the details, but I cannot be there for a very long time. It drains me. So I do understand, what is my forte. I do understand where I thrive. I'm able to shift and go into more, really detailed work and information and data. but I know I do not dig that. But I do it when I need to because I'm curious, so I want to be familiar with. But to do it on prolonged, a period of time, I know I'm not the fastest, and I know I'm not the best at it, and I leave it to those, exactly as you said, those people that really dig that area.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's good. That's good. And I think, yeah, I mean, when you look at it high level with client businesses, right? I mean, I say this a lot, but one of the key things that I learned when I worked corporate management is that when you go into a meeting to get a decision, you need to know the answer before you walk into the meeting. And what that means, and this is something that very, very few people do, but fundamentally, if you're, for example, if you're trying to convince a client of something, or if you're, like the scenario you mentioned before, where you're multiple people collaborating, you need to go and make sure that you talk to the people who are, I mean, sometimes it's not a vote, right? But you basically go ahead and talk to the people who are going to voice their opinion prior to the meeting, and get them convinced prior to the meeting that whatever it is you want to do is the right thing to do, right? Because when you're first in a meeting, you never know what happens. You never know what way people's brains are turning and so on, right? So fundamentally, you really need to be proactive. Obviously, a sales meeting, you can't always know what's going to happen if you're trying to sell someone. But most meetings, like when you're giving updates, like one of the things I would always do if I have some key stakeholders and I'm about to give an update, and particularly if there's something where I really need someone's support, or where something difficult have happened where it's going to be a little bit difficult situation, I always call the important people who I feel I need support from beforehand. And one, make sure they understand the situation, and two, make sure that I basically put myself in a situation where I kind of get their support beforehand, right? So I'm not sitting trying to convince people in the actual meeting of saying, oh, this is the right way to go around it, and so on, right? So actually what happens prior to meetings is often much more important than what happens in meetings. And that's probably the biggest trick that I see many, many business owners that definitely haven't been in the corporate world that struggle with that a lot, right? Because they're like, oh, but I walked into this meeting, I had the right plan. My plan was much better than anyone else's. And, people didn't get it. But the reason why they didn't get it was you didn't take the time prior to the meeting to actually go through it with them and make sure they understood it and make sure they were ready to vouch for it, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing from my experience, and that's definitely something where many business owners have a lot to learn, if you will.
Yeah, that loops exactly back to the previous what we were talking about, and it's communication.
Yeah.
So there is another element by what you just described, what you are doing is that you are actually keeping up to date the key stakeholders, and you need to understand who those key stakeholders are. You also need to understand who is the decision maker. And I understand in corp you not always have a direct access to all of them at the all the time because they're busy usually. But if that project is really important and you know how to communicate well, they will make time for you. You see, this is very important, distinction. Having them understand how crucial it is for them to be up to date prior any decision making in a meeting, rooms and so on. So absolutely, I very much agree with you what you described. It's very important, and it's a communication again.
Yep, definitely. Any other key things that you can think of in terms of sort of client engagements and so on? Is there anything else we haven't touched on yet that you think we still need to touch on a bit?
Sure. I would say, how about looking at communication with companies, let's say with corporations, and with the teams and stakeholders from a little bit different perspective. And that is, what if you do not have access to stakeholders, most of the time? What if you cannot actually update them prior the let's say a meeting? And what if they are in complete disagreement? how the things should be, you know, done, and, you know, what should we do, what we should do, you know, as a team, even as an external. So there's another aspect that a lot of companies, I would say, are now adopting, and I'm not sure if you had opportunity to be part of such a process, but this is all about doing sessions together. You can call them workshops. You can, you know, some people call them brainstorms, but brainstorms are a different thing to a workshop, where what I'm talking about is that when a team is, like, say, struggling, or they're halfway through the project and something is not going on and they cannot agree, and I'm sure you will agree with me that sometimes in a bigger corp, you know, organization, you will have a different teams also collaborating on the same project within that company, and those teams are not agreeing amongst themselves. So there is like a, you could also call it like an internal disagreement, internal war, whatever you want to call it. But I see this quite often, where, let's say, heads of those departments or you know, lead people in those departments are actually not unable to actually come to a normal agreement, you know, within the company, and everyone is basically having their point of view and just kind of, you know, ignoring the other possibilities. So there is a lot of, basically, I would say, from my perspective as external, a lot of miscommunication. And then it goes back to the psychology and how people are behaving, and you kind of want to understand it also. But what I've been part of, and what I've been hired in to actually help people and help bigger companies to solve is the internal, you know, miscommunication, and not being able to find a solution that can move the project forward, where I would be coming in and leading as a facilitator to do a specific workshop. So this could be a creative workshop, this could be innovation workshop, this could be finding a new solution, or agreeing on the potential solutions. And this is part of the, you know, part of the expertise that I have, where I'm able to work with very different leads, very different stakeholders. Some of them very difficult, and some, you know, and it's like it's a beautiful combination of lots of different personalities, and there is a process that you can, you know, take them through to get to the common goal. And it really rolls back to actually bringing people together into the room, and setting the right expectations, explaining what's going to be happening, why we're doing this, getting them on board beforehand, obviously, agreeing, right? And then really working through the process, and working through I'm not talking about the negotiation, that's a different thing. Actually working together on the project and exploring all of the perspectives. So quite often I find very interesting aspect that that comes out of these workshops is that they all suddenly lose whose idea was what. So it's like if you get the teams, and if you get even stakeholders to build on top of each other on their ideas, it all becomes like just one, and no one is like, I said that, I am the one who, it's none of that. You are able to eliminate that, part of the, I would say, probably it's just personalities, right? That try to
I think
something.
Yeah, I think, my experience in that area is also that different people within the same organization often have very different priorities, right? And I think that's also one of the tricks that a lot of people are missing, because when you're dealing with one organization, if you come in as an agency and supposed to help with marketing, for example, right? Like, to you, the goal is clear. You need to basically bring more people in to the business, help them make more sales, right? But there's a lot of different interests within the business that might actually point in different directions. So some people might want to do one type of sale instead of the other. Others might, focus a lot on the method because that's what they believe in, and so on and so forth, right? So within an organization, you often have a lot of stakeholders that, and it's not necessarily because they want different things per se, But the very, very critical thing is understanding what the different stakeholders are looking for and finding ways where you can sell the idea in that direction, right? Because the thing is, a lot of the time, you probably are wanting to do the right thing, but the challenge is that people might not see it that way, and they might not feel that their interests are being looked out for, right? So when you actually put yourself in a position where you communicate with people first, get to know what they're really looking for, and when you know that, you can then go back to them and say, you know, oh, you really want to sell these, I don't know, big products or whatever. You know, here's a plan for how we can do that. And someone else might want to sell small products, and you then go and say, hey, you know, here's the plan. Now, you know, some of the plan is to sell some of these big ones, and some of the plan is to sell these smaller ones. But fundamentally, the whole thing is that you want to basically create win-win-win situations, right? Where everyone feels they're getting something out of it from a positive perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the most important business lessons that I ever learned, that, you know, it's not about someone winning and someone losing. There's almost always cases where everyone wins, but people are so busy looking out for themselves that they often don't see the best opportunities around, right? And that's one of the benefits with being like helping negotiate and helping to do workshops like yourself, is the fact that, you know, it's easier from the outside to go in and actually see those things sometimes. And fundamentally, you put yourself in a situation where, you know, you help them solve multiple problems. So.
Yeah, that really, it's a ripple effect, because, you know, me coming in as external, I don't have any associations. I don't have any emotional attachments. I don't have any history. I don't have any bias, you know, within that company. And that makes me very neutral ground. And that is part of my job, to create the neutral ground for people working within that company, and help them really to see those, you know, different interests. And they, you know, different departments have a different roles to play. And even often, and I don't know how it is for you, but what I realize is that the bigger company is, harder it is for people to stay up to date, communicating amongst each other and understanding what other people are actually trying to solve. So, you know, like more it grows, right? It's much harder for them to actually then see what are the differences, and there's a lot of lack of communication or clear understanding of what that communication actually means, right? And there is a lot of interpretation and misinterpretation. So it's very fascinating to see that, you know, like more they grow, slower they become, right? Smaller company, more agile, more faster. So, you know, those kind of rules are still staying there. But what's your experience in like more the company grows, it's much harder for people to actually, you know, communicate clearly?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the fact that a lot of businesses don't have very strong communication processes, right? And I think fundamentally, I mean, communication is one of the, probably one of the top 2 or 3 things that I spend most time on with my clients, right? Because it is that important. But I think fundamentally, again, like, the bigger companies get, the more they tend to focus on their own silos, right? And I actually worked with a client at one point that ended up losing so much money, where they had one department, sales and marketing, that was basically preparing for, it wasn't a product launch, but it was basically a huge push for a product that, you know, made them really good margins and so on. The challenge was they hadn't actually checked with fulfillment department and basically supply. So they end up launching this huge campaign for product that was going to be out of stock for like 8 months or something. And that was a typical example of not miscommunication, but no communication between departments, right?
How is that possible within one company?
Yeah,
this always puzzled me. Like,
what happens is when you have a small company, right? When you have 5 people, they always communicate. But when they grow bigger and bigger, you know, sales literally becomes a separate unit. Operations becomes a separate unit. Finance become a separate unit. And if you don't have strong communication in the top, it is very, very difficult for the organization to actually achieve communication at any level, right? And even when you have pretty good communication on the top, again, having a great company culture where things are actually communicated down to the organization in an effective manner can definitely also be very difficult, right?
Yeah.
So again, like communication is really that critical, but it's very, very easy for people to end up in situations where fundamentally it's not effective for them to be, right? And going back to the same point, I mean, when you're a service provider, again, you often think, oh, I'm just going in to do this thing. But you end up very often in this political game. And I know a lot of people saying, oh, that's not for me. If organizations like that, you know, they're not someone I want to work with. And that's okay to a certain extent. But most people would like bigger clients. Like most people would like bigger corporations and so on as clients, right? And if you do want that, you need to learn to play that game, and you need to learn to not just say, this is what I do, but actually look at, again, the stakeholders. You need to look at people's interests and being able to do that effectively so that, again, in the end of the day, people don't look at if you said the right thing. They don't look at if you gave the right solution. They look at the actual outcome. And if your solution was perfect but never implemented, your solution is worth nothing, right?
100%.
Your solution is only worth something if it get implemented. So that, again, the people that are successful working with these larger companies is people who understand how to communicate and how to actually get what they're providing rolled out to the clients, right?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think, you know, the point that you raised that, you know, a lot of companies would actually want to have bigger clients. I think it's, you very much, you know, spot on in there. Do you think that smaller businesses are scared of onboarding bigger clients?
No, I think they don't. First of all, there's often more networking in working with bigger clients. Like the benefit of, if you will, of working with an entrepreneur is you talk to the man in charge and stuff can happen really quickly, right? That man or woman, if you will. But when you work with bigger businesses, first of all, the decision cycle tend to be longer. Which, you know, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they're needing cash here and now. So they sometimes don't, like a 6-month decision cycle don't always seem very sexy to them. So that's also a challenge. But I think fundamentally, like they all want to be in a situation where they have bigger clients, right? They're all aiming for that, but they simply just don't know how to, let's call it, play the game. Or they don't know how to find these clients. They don't know if they actually get them on the phone or get talking to them. They don't know how to communicate because, like, selling a huge corporate client is very, very different, right? Like if you sell an entrepreneur, it's like, yeah, you give me $1,000 and I'll make sure you make 2, right? But working with larger companies, it's a totally different game, right? And you need to understand that game before you start doing that, right? Yeah,
I agree.
So very good, Zuzana. I think that was a very, very good conversation. Anything else from a management standpoint? Any sort of favorite recommendations or resources or anything that you think the audience should have a listen to or have a look at?
Sure. Anything else? You know, that one thing that came to my mind, and maybe this is very particular for certain people. So this could be actually useful for anyone who is actually working as an employee within the organization, or a business owner or a small business owner who is collaborating or working as an external with a company, that they might have a stakeholder or manager that is very, let's say, micromanaging or always wanting to know everything. And it almost feels like, you know, like they're like a helicopter manager, like just hovering on top of you all the time. So, and they usually tend to be very detail-oriented people. So I would say it's very important to understand what type of a profile of the stakeholder or the manager you are collaborating with or working for. This is crucial for you to actually identify it. So I would say anyone to really get, let's say, maybe a coach that helped them to understand how to understand people or work with people. And one of the tricks that tend to work really well, that from my experience, is that anytime I'm dealing with someone who is very detail orientated and maybe it's even unsure about their position within the company and they're trying to prove themselves, so they hired you in so you can work on their project, whatever that is. One thing that really helped was almost over delivering the information about the progress of the work you are doing. So if you, I'll give you an example. So if you basically set yourself up for communicating, more than usual with this particular stakeholder or manager, let's say, put yourself a calendar reminder every Friday, send a recap of the whole work and everything you've done, and just blast right out maybe 2-3 pages with details, with information, whatever it is what you are working on, and send it to this person so they have it in their inbox. And what that really does is that, first of all, you are actually for yourself recapping everything what happened. So it's a very good practice for you to then build a case study. But above it all, you are actually providing this person a detailed information they desire, they need. And guess what? It's almost never, happening that they would read all of it, or that they would use all of it. But it gives them a kind of a sense of security that they can always go back, roll back, and tap into the information. So they can then feed it back and provide in the meetings they have internally with their manager or whatever that is. So over-delivered information you are actually working on is one way of dealing with anyone who is very, controlling or very detail orientated and just very, anxious. So you need to understand what type of a people you are dealing with. I think this would be very, very crucial information for you to have on board.
And that's actually the first thing people learn in my course. That's figuring out personalities and really understanding the type of person you're dealing with. And actually, just another follow-up point on that, right? So a lot of the time, particularly with bigger companies, right, one of the best things you can do in a sales role is make sure you help people sell it to their boss. So, when you're working with entrepreneurs, it's always about convincing the person in front of you. But when you're working with bigger companies, that is rarely who you're trying to convince. So if you're talking with someone who's a SEO manager or marketing manager, you might have a great proposal, but they need to go and sell that to their boss.
Yep.
Now, if you help them do that, if you put some information together, things like ROI and, clear expectation and so on and so forth, that actually make it really, really easy for that individual to sell what you're doing to their boss, then that is one of the best ways to increase the likelihood of you actually getting them as a client, right? So that was something that just popped up in my mind. But that's actually something that, again, a lot of people who doesn't understand the corporate world doesn't really get it, because they're just like, oh, I always tell people this, and they just sign and get started. But in the corporate world, there's often much more, there's a bigger decision metric, and there's basically often more people who needs to sign off. And very often it's, someone come to their boss and say, hey boss, I think we should do SEO, or, I think we should do Facebook ads. And the boss says, okay, go and figure out a proposal and figure out what it would cost and whatever. Yeah. And when they then go get it, if it's not clear to the boss who asked for the proposal, like what the benefits is and that they're going to make money from it, then, it's significantly likely that it would ever happen. So,
yeah, 100% agree. There's another thing that I usually tell my peers as a piece of advice when I'm asked, also, is that try to teach something. So, whoever's the I would say not the decision maker, but whoever is the person you are coming into that corporation through, so is seeking your expertise. try to, on the sidelines, always teach them something without them knowing that you are actually teaching them something, because then they will, they will not feel like, oh, I feel silly that I didn't know this, right? No, but it's a very subtle way of actually sharing your expertise and making them actually becoming that, right? And knowledgeable. So on a long run, people will remember you because of this, because you are giving them a knowledge and you are giving them experience. And also, I think, if you are genuine about actually teaching them something more, they will appreciate it. They will not forget it. So this is more about like a human exchange, which is, you never know where that person is gonna go from that company. They might go somewhere else, in the same industry. So this is really building your friendships, right? Your human interaction, right, with one another. So I always recommend people try to share your knowledge, try to teach them something, but do it very subtle way so they don't know you're actually trying to teach them something. Just genuinely give them something.
100% agree. Right, Zuzana. If people are eager to get hold of you, what's the best way of doing that?
Sure. So people can find me on my website. I think that's the easiest way, and that is zuzanadobro.com. And let me spell it for you because my name is a bit different. So that's ZUZANADOBRO.com. And in there I have links to my social media profiles, so just reach out. I'd love talking to people, so just send me an email or reach out over the Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn.
I'll make sure we include it all in the show notes. So thank you very much for joining me here today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity and for your time.
Excellent. And to the listeners, we'll be back again next week. See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Please leave a review. It means the world to us. You can also learn more about management at madsingers.com.